How can you check whether a list is empty in Python? One way to check whether a list is empty is to check the length of that list. If the length is 0, the list must be empty. Or, if we wanted to check for non-empty lists, we could make sure that the length is greater than 0. But this is actually not the most typical way to check for an empty list in Python. Many Python users prefer to check for an empty list by evaluating its truthiness. A non-empty list is truthy, and an empty list is falsy. This if statement's condition didn't pass because the list was empty and therefore falsy. If we wanted to check specifically for an empty list, we could put the not operator before the list. The not operator checks the falsiness of a given object, so not numbers will return true when numbers is empty and false when it's not empty. Relying on truthiness instead of using length checks might seem odd and kind of implicit in a way, but Python's if statements are all about truthiness checks. When an object is passed to an if statement, Python checks the truthiness of that object. And when it comes to collections, truthiness checks are non-emptiness checks. What if we checked for an empty list by comparing our list to another empty list? This does work, but it's a little bit unusual to see in Python. The downside of this approach is that it assumes that numbers is a list, or that it can be evaluated as equal to a list. This might not seem like a problem, and it probably often isn't a problem, but it may be sometimes. Python programmers often rely heavily on duck typing. Duck typing is the idea that we often prefer to rely on specific, necessary behaviors of an object rather than on that object's type. We say, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. So instead of asking whether an object is equal to an empty list, many Python programmers prefer to check for the behavior of emptiness via a falsiness check. This way, our code would work with an empty list, an empty tuple, or any empty collection. When I write Python code that checks for an empty list, I usually rely on truthiness and falsiness using Python's if statements and its not operator. PEP 8, Python's official style guide, recommends this approach.